against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 23, which was a supplementary paper, performance exceptions report for March. Thank you, Peter.
Good morning.
This
is obviously the third quarter performance exceptions report. The bottom line of it is that it's very steady and consistent with previous reports since New Year. I will talk through it, but I won't necessarily line by line because of the stability of it. Levels of service are very much consistent with the same period last month. 84, call it 85%. The same forecast at this period last year was just over 89, with a final result of 77.5 at year end. There's usually a tail off, and that's largely due to the impact of the resident survey, which is not part of this forecast at this point. The actual exceptions themselves are steady with the last 6 months, largely around three waters, transport, parks, and items that we've talked over before. I'm happy to field questions at any point, but I would like to just sort of go over the top of it first. In terms of the capital watch list, again, the results very consistent with the past 3 months. There are 1 or 2 new items in there, and probably a little research to do on those as to why they've appeared, or rather how they've been noted, but no significant changes from that last report. That's followed by the actual exceptions and the management comments around them, and that usually results in some discussion, but I'd probably rather finish the paper before doing that. Just moving through those to the scattergram, which is a way of showing all activities in the LTP in terms of both their delivery of levels of service and their budget. There have been a couple of improvements since last month. Notably, roads and footpaths has trended up, meaning that there are about, I think from memory, 3 additional levels of service that have come on track as a good forecast. At the same time, there's been some caution around some of the parks levels of service and the impact of the resident survey on those. So roads up, parks down is the bottom line of that. And that's really the quick overview. I appreciate the size of the agenda today, so I've moved through that fairly swiftly, but I'm happy to field questions from the floor.
Great, thanks very much. Yanni?
I think I'm on the right report. On page 17, I'm reading maintain resident satisfaction with road condition, maintain resident satisfaction with footpath condition, reduce number of complaints received, respond to customer service requests within appropriate timeframes. There's no actuals to match the targets. So I'm just a little bit confused about what you're saying earlier, that things are trending up when the information that we've got on that page shows that we don't even know how we're meeting the targets.
Okay, look, I won't really speak for the transport guys, but just to answer some basics there is no actual because the survey results are not part of this forecast. They only come once a year, and therefore if you don't know the result, it's automatically recorded as 0. That doesn't mean that the result is 0, it just means that it's not available yet. These have, while I say it's trending up, from memory these have been in the exceptions forecast for some time, so they're stable, but others have been forecast as more likely to succeed. So the ones that are trending up are not these ones.
So you're saying there are other measures in these areas?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the fact that these are annual survey results, why would they be in there every month being reported on? Because
the forecast is a forecast based on how the manager feels they're tracking. So if they, for example, missed their survey result by 1% last year and they've done a lot of good things since, they could confidently predict that they're in pretty good shape. But if they had missed their survey result by a significant margin last year, the direction from Deloitte's and other external audit functions was, if your target's 80 and you're getting 30, you should mark that yellow as a precaution until you have some firm evidence that you've increased your performance. So that way you avoid getting the sudden dramatic drop at year end.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it doesn't quite make sense. You have a bunch of annual targets around an annual survey, so you just report those once a year. Then obviously you've got measures which might give you better information during the course of the year.
Yes.
So you're saying that those are actually fine, which is why they haven't appeared here as an exception.
The reason they're here as an exception is that the manager feels that there's a high degree of risk or some risk around achieving the result that they are aiming for, and that they want to signal that rather than give you 11 months of false sense of security and then drop dramatically at year end.
But it's a binary thing. So, for example, the road condition, 38%, if it comes in at 37, you've missed it. If it comes in at 39, you've made it. But actually, I'm not quite sure what information we're really getting from that.
I mean, if you just go on the first page 7, you say changes from previous month, 4 levels of service, transport, condition of road, service requests, sweeping. They've all been changed from amber to green. But I can't see on the evidence that I've got in front of me, A, we don't even know how much number of complaints we're getting, and B, we don't have the resident survey results. So, and those are areas that we know previously that we've missed the targets. So I'm trying to understand how we could be thinking that they would be changed from amber to green when actually we just don't seem to have the information that would support that.
Well, this is an exception report.
Yeah.
So it only talks about things that are marked as an exception. Perhaps, Richard, maybe you might like to speak to some of these in terms of the detail, but in terms of process, the idea was to make sure that council has an early heads up, the no surprises logic, that if a level of service does look like it's got risk or is going to be compromised, that there is some flag during the course of the year rather than simply signalling it's okay, oh, sorry, it didn't work.
No, look, I appreciate that. So if you just go on page 7, where you've got changes from previous month, for LOS, which were previously forecast amber for February, are now forecast as green, being on track. But the survey results and the level of service results that we're getting, there's no information there that would support, that I can see, being changed from amber to green. In fact, I would say that they should still be amber because we don't have the survey results and we don't have the CSRs that are coming in with the new IT system.
Sorry, the ones that have gone on track are not the ones you're looking at here, because by definition, the greens aren't here.
Yeah, but look on page 10, Yanni, and you'll see there's a whole bunch. You've got the greens and the ambers and the reds. All we're seeing here are the reds.
Right.
I think the issue is here, we've got a bunch of indicators which we're getting on a monthly level around CSR requests, for example, and then we have survey results, which are annual.
That's correct.
Clearly
I mean, the majority
will clearly show 0 for the whole year until the survey, so I'm not really sure they should even be in this report.
Well, the reporting is set up that if the manager feels that there's an exception and there are commentaries that should come through to council, that they do.
Right, okay.
Well, when are we getting the resident survey results?
They exist now.
No.
Okay, and so when are we going to see them? Okay.
And sorry, and just
Yes.
Okay, so when we get those, maybe we'll have
Okay.
a look at the interaction between them and this report and work out if we need.
Yes.
right, and
Tuesday.
And the other thing is, when are we going to get the CSR numbers again? The CSR numbers for things like roading complaints, litter bin complaints. So as part of this report, there's a number of things where we don't have that. So page 17, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, reduce the number of complaints received, target 295, comments across all transport for all road and footpath services, this number we're challenged to meet. Complaint volumes appear to have risen since the high-risk introduction, but there's no number of what we're getting. And the one above it, the majority of CSRs and road maintenance are links, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It just, there's nothing there to tell us how many complaints we've had.
Would you like to answer that, Richard?
Well, I think that my understanding is the CSRs are reported to you monthly, but in terms of there is commentary around the process that we're working through in terms of the hybrid system, so I don't know if I can add too much more to it. It's in that report.
Okay, so there's no numbers. Okay, the final question I had was around noise control. And yeah, it's just, the response doesn't seem to be meeting the target, and I just wondered if you say you're reviewing the level of service, but I guess given how disruptive noise can be for people when they have to, ring up, especially late at night for things going through the night, I just would want a little bit more confidence of what steps we're taking to ensure that when people ring noise control, that they are getting a response.
Look, I can ask Tracy to provide a detailed response back to the committee on that. Well, she's here. Great. It's terrific.
You can do it now. Oops. Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I have had a meeting with a contractor yesterday, actually, so I can actually share with you all the tangible actions that they're undertaking to try and lift the level of service. So, extra resource from a patrolling perspective. They have employed extra resource 6 weeks ago, and that resource has now been deployed into the field, so they have more guards to respond in a faster manner. They're still trying to recruit more. Given that it's a difficult role, it's very hard to get the right people to do that role, so they're having a little bit of difficulty to get the right people and the right fit. We do have a problem with what they call the East Territory, which is basically Spencer Park right through to Woolston area. It's such a big geographical spread, being able to get there within 60 minutes is proving increasingly challenging for them. So they have cut that geographical area in half, and that is effective as of this weekend. So we should see an improvement in that space there. We also have a process that we've adopted where we as council identify high profile sites or areas that we have concern of that have either been historic in nature or have been occurring during the week, and we give them a notification on a Friday night as to which sites we have concerns about, and they have agreed to send a senior officer to those sites if we get any complaints there. They have looked at their call answering times in the call centre in Armagard, and the call centre has more resource now, and they have got 2 extra temporary staff on from a Tuesday through to a Saturday now to respond to Christchurch calls specifically, so that's a really good improvement. Essentially the message is the management team are doing their best that they can to improve the situation. We're not going to meet the target this year. It's currently 84% year to date. To pull that back to 90 in 2 months, we're not going to meet that target.
So I think the question I asked previously around noise as well is if they go over the time, this target actually, okay, they've responded within an hour or they haven't, but it'd be quite good to know how many they're not responding to at all, or also what the overtime was. So if they're not responded within 60 minutes, does that mean it's 2 hours or 3 hours, or how do we know, that they are responding?
We get a report on a weekly basis.
Right.
Yeah, and we manage that at an operational level.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask just a quick one on the back of that?
Yes, certainly.
Thanks. Thanks, Tracy. Just that, is there a plan B so that when we had that glitch with Armagard with the Red Zone party and earlier in the year that people couldn't get through, is there a system in place to cover that?
Well, that is that dedicated Christchurch resource that
Right.
Armagard call centre have deployed.
Okay, so that
yeah, and we have seen an improvement since then.
Yeah, okay.
There will always be events that we have no knowledge of. I think that's just the nature of a city that doesn't sort of
Right.
work all collaboratively. But we are able to respond to the best possible way for those unexpected events.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of being proactive, because obviously this costs money,
Yeah.
because we have to employ more people to go out. Do we go to places such as nightclubs or new places opening up to say, by the way, this is the noise limit that you're allowed? Because we've had a few issues with those. So
Yeah,
do we-
so not within the noise control contract, but as part of my alcohol licensing team and my environmental health team, the two work very, very closely, and they do educate any new bar owners or managers as to what the requirements are. And we do have weekend, my alcohol licensing officers are also out in the weekend doing monitoring visits, so we get across it there.
Okay. Andrew, did you have a question?
Thank you. Looking at the performance by activity table in Appendix 3, one thing that's immediately noticeable is the colour and size of some of the fields in the bottom left of the quadrant. If we were to translate that into what I would think of as a trading deficit, presumably the size and colour of those fields would show that we're expecting a deficit, or we're in a deficit position.
I'm not sure I've quite got a handle on your question. Just bear with me on this.
So,
What page?
so this is Appendix Attachment C on page 22. So we've got a dotted line, this is if I'm reading this thing correctly, we've got a dotted line down the centre which is financial performance target 0%. Anything to the left of that would show an under-delivery against that financial performance target, presumably. So that would be either an overspend or an under-recovery.
Correct.
So the table is good in showing us where that might be tracking, but what it doesn't do is to quantify what the level of that might be.
But over the page, you'll see each of those circles and the financial detail that sits under them,
Yeah.
in terms of the planned budget, the year-end forecast and the variance. So you're able to get a dollar figure around how that's tracking. So those activities correlate directly to the circles.
So that's then translated into that next table.
Yes.
All right. So,
No, thank you.
yeah, I'm probably needing some guidance as to how to read these things, actually. So what does that table tell us? Does that table tell us that we're forecasting a deficit?
It tells you which activities are both performing and on budget, and which activities are not performing to standard and which are overspent, for example.
Yep.
It's a way of putting all the activities in a single spot to show both their delivery and their spend at the same time. So it's by necessity a little complex. But the key things it shows you are the movements of the major activities, their delivery and their spend rate. For example, the traditional reporting, financial and non-financial, it might show you that an activity is delivering, but it doesn't show you that it's, for example, over or underspending to do that. So this puts all of it on one page. In this instance, you can see that roading has gone upwards in terms of delivery, but is still either overspent, or another way of interpreting overspent, and it's a matter of discussion, is under budgeted. So it's a complex picture because it's everything we do and all the dollars we have and how they're performing on a single page.
So then when we look at the totals at the bottom, that shows that we've got a variance of 2.6 million.
Correct?
Yep. So that's as it stands at the moment, or that's what's forecast at year end?
That is forecast at year end after carry forward, but I'd suggest that in terms of detailed financial understanding, you should probably be talking to the financial report. This is really meant to inform the scattergram on the page before, to say, if you spot, for example, an outlying activity, how big is the budget? Is it really worth stressing over? Whereas maybe a much bigger, gruntier activity that's only a little bit off could actually have a lot more dollars involved. So this is indicative and high level. To go into the details of what might make up a deficit, for example, you really need to talk to the finance report.
All right. Now that's helpful in terms of interpreting the information in this report. That's great. Thank you.
Vicky?
Was the water, the chlorination, getting the temporary chlorination out. Is that still 90% by the end of May, 95% by the end of June, and the rest by spring?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that. That's not part, those results are not reflected in this report.
Probably a key performance indicator, though. The water temporary chlorination is in the report. It's on page 14.
Our most recent modelling shows that we will have chlorine out of all of our network except for the central zone by the end of May, based on winter flows.
So all by the end of May, except for the central zone?
Yes, by
And-
shutting down those wells that require
Right.
chlorination and having them available if we have a peak demand at some time. But that's what our most recent modelling shows at the moment.
And remind us of the suburbs in the central zone.
Sorry?
Remind us that the central zone's the big one, isn't it?
Christchurch, the southern part back towards Cashmere and through to Ferrymead, Woolston, those areas.
And when you say Christchurch,
CBD,
CBD, CBD, Cashmere, Spraydon area,
Ferrymead, yep.
Ferrymead,
Yep.
Ferrymead, Linwood. Right. Okay. Thank you.
It's effectively most of the former Christchurch City area. So northwest was Waimari, south was Paparua.
Riccarton was separate.
Riccarton is separate, yeah.
Good. Right. Okay. Okay. So 90%. So all of the city except what was the central zone. What is the
Yep.
central zone by the end of May, and then the rest by.
I need to get a more recent report on that.
I think there's one coming next.
Yeah,
on
because
the 6th.
we've got to get that UV plant put in place.
Right. Okay. So there hasn't been a major slippage in what we've
There
been
has been a
advertising.
slippage.
There has
but
been a slippage.
Yeah,
Okay. Thanks.
for that UV plant. Yeah.
For the UV affected area, which is that the central zone?
Central zone.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Jimmy?
Thank you. I have one question. On page 18, I'm concerned remedial action for parks, because based on the staff report, 3 category, community parks and also cemetery, as well as Hagley Park. The community park and the Hagley Park remedial action, to me, looks like that's very reasonable, but I just don't know the cemetery park remedial action. Why have the river bank or have a playground? Where about?
Look, I need to preface this by saying this is a forecast made last month. Okay, so it's not today, it's made by staff basically at the end of last month.
Yes.
Now, since then, the survey results have been received, and I don't want to second guess any of those, but this was a forecast made without knowing the numbers, and some of those numbers could be better than this cautionary forecast indicates. So I think that maybe the best way to discuss this would be when the results have been published, and that way you actually know what the results are, rather than speculating on what was a precautionary forecast in the absence of any data.
Yeah, okay, maybe you misunderstand it. I mean the cemetery, usually, maybe the fallen leaves, etc., just tidy up, cleaning, okay. Cemetery, whether city, we have cemetery is near the river bank or kind of near the playground. I didn't see anyway.
I'm sorry, I don't quite grasp the question.
If you check remedial action, you particularly mention, we need to, have a deployment of some casual staff, focus on the riverbank area or focus on the high-use playground. So I didn't see any of the cemetery have a playground. Riverbank, this is my view.
Okay, this is,
Need to be reviewed more clearly, you know, particulars.
What's happened here,
Yeah.
Jimmy, is whoever has put in the remedial actions just copy
Yes.
and pasted
Yes.
3 times.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
But we need to remedial, we should focus on, you know, what's the root cause, we're dealing with that kind of issue. It's not a just general purpose.
I think that's what we call a pro forma response.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks for spotting that. David?
Just going back to your scatter diagram, looking at the areas, the items that would sit in that left-hand bottom quadrant, are we sort of saying that, you know, they are an area of focus and either underspend or under budget?
under delivery or under, or overspend.
Or in going forward, they are areas that may need to be considered for an increase in budget?
Well, the areas that you would look at in terms of understanding on a case-by-case basis what's driving it, whether it's budget, whether it's delivery, whether it's resourcing, why are they in that space?
Okay.
And it's regardless of the activity, that's the quadrant where you would make inquiry.
Great, thank you.
And Tim?
Thank you. Just going back to page 18, parks. Just give me 2 seconds. The 3 parks areas that are, so it's off the residence survey, but do we have areas here that we've got the sports clubs and sports parks defined out of the general?
There is a survey around that John could talk to in some detail. I think it's called the CERM survey, which is around satisfaction with the facilities and processes provided and that kind of thing. So that is part of the resident survey result, and those results would be part of the briefing on Tuesday.
Okay.
John, did you want to add anything about the CERM survey?
No, I'd only do that on behalf of Nigel Cox.
Oh,
It's,
sorry, I've forgotten your
an
new
internationally benchmarked independent customer service. The results are compared against facilities throughout Australasia. Gives a very, very accurate picture of where Christchurch is amongst its peers. So it's very robust.
And we're having that's being presented to us on Tuesday, is that correct?
Well, it's part of the overall results, yes.
Okay. Just on page 19, where it's got recreation, sports and events, the events team are bringing in a specialist crowd control. Is that, do we know, is that to upskill our team?
I can find out the detail of why they're doing that.
Because it is kind of 101 stuff with events. And with page 21, with the scattergun type we've got here, down where it's got traffic safety and efficiency, is that CTOC? Is that what we're talking about, or is that the General Council overall? Because I'm just aware that costs for events on roads and to use roads or crossroads, both professional events and community events, the costs are becoming prohibitive. So it's all right to be an organisation where you say, let's make this as safe as possible, but it's totally unusable. So I'm just concerned that we're getting into that area. So I'm just...
So you're looking for additional information about why that's there?
Yeah, and I guess it's the measure of, for us as an organisation, let's make it as safe as possible, but the reality is it's so safe that people can't afford to do it.
Okay.
If it's a cost analysis, if
No,
there's risk.
I understand. Look, we'll come back to you with the underlying logic there. Now, I've been joined by John, who...
I can answer Tim's question.
Then go for it.
On behalf of Nigel Cox, the crowd control is a peer review and just a little bit of an independent look to generate extra ideas in order to manage the large crowds in sensitive environments like the Botanic Gardens. So it doesn't replace Nigel's internal expertise, but it just looks to make sure that we can do the best job we can in a rather sensitive environment.
Right. Thank you. Cheers, John. Thanks for that.
Dion?
Yeah, I was just looking at the public transport facilities, and I just noted that we're waiting for the ECAN data to be available. Does anybody know when that might be available?
What page, Dion, is that?
16.
Sorry?
16 under the improved user satisfaction of public transport facilities. Yeah, it does.
I'm sorry, I can't answer it. Maybe Richard knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, which number is it, councillor?
It's on page 16. 10.4.4.
Oh yeah, so they do a survey each year. It is actually of the users of the public transport service, and that generally comes in, it's my understanding, but members of the Joint PT Committee might correct me on this, at a very high number, around 98%. So we obviously haven't got that data yet, but that tends to sit pretty high. But it does only survey those people who use it as opposed to people who don't use it.
Right, okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I was just going to say, does satisfaction survey stuff, or is it separate?
I think that's separate, that's done by them.
Right.
Thanks. Might as well just stay there.
Yanni?
Just one question on the water leaks. Again, this is one where we don't seem to have the number of complaints. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. So there's page 14, and then there's another measure. Sorry, I just can't. Page 13. So I think there was another measure too of the complaints we're getting about the water. So I've now been advised when I ring the call centre, there's now no time frame for responding to water leak requests. Can you just give us at a high level an understanding around how we're going? I know there's been a memo that we've received, and it's kind of outlined saying that they think we're going to get on top of the number of complaints and start reducing. But it seems kind of odd that the call centre would be now also saying there's no time frame now for dealing with your complaint.
Look, unfortunately, Sarah's just this moment left for a short break, I think. So perhaps the best thing would be to hold that in abeyance until she comes back.
Yeah, okay.
Sarah will know the answer,
right?
And I don't want to speculate on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And can we release
Can you
the
comment
memo
on
that we've got it on our hub? But I don't know what the status is. But I think it would be quite useful to release that to the public so that they could see the things that we're doing.
I can't update you more than what the memo that came out talking about the strategies to get on top of those leaks and the response times and how we're prioritising them. Not sure Sarah can help.
My apologies.
Okay, Sarah, it was just a question. So with the water complaints around leakages,
Yes.
now when you ring the call centre, they don't give you a time frame for fixing it. And I just trying to understand, given that we got a memo saying that we were making progress and getting on top of the number of complaints by extra crews and doing things around the clock.
Yes.
I was just kind of puzzled why the call centre is not providing people with a time frame for a response.
Yeah, well, we should be, Yanni, because we have changed the time frame, and we've also changed the notification that people now receive, telling them that the fact that we've got this issue across the city, that there is a workforce, a targeted workforce looking to address it. Urgent jobs are still done within, there's somebody out there within an hour, and ones that require further work, we're now saying that we'll provide them with an update no later than the 26th of May if it's not fixed already. So
actually getting the water leak fixed,
yes.
we don't give a time frame for that. We give a time frame for telling them when it will be fixed if it hasn't been fixed.
No, we explain to them if it's urgent, that with somebody will be out there within an hour. If it's not, then there's a crew of people working across the city, and we regularly meet with our Three Waters colleagues to provide further updates for our customer services staff so they can tell people when they call us. But anybody that might email us or that also wants a notification, we've changed the notification to say that if it's not fixed by the 26th of May, we'll be back in touch with them to let them know a further update.
It doesn't... we've got the memo, but it doesn't give me confidence that we're getting on top of it. Given the response from the call centre and what you're telling us now, it seems to indicate that it's just becoming a much bigger problem.
Well, no, my thinking would be, John, that things are getting better.
But if people put complaints in from 2 months ago and they still haven't been fixed, it's kind of hard for people to have confidence that things are getting better.
City Care have increased their staff on this by 50%. Before the Easter break, there was a much better clearance rate. Unfortunately, over the Easter break, that fell back a bit while the number of staff were away. And I've been informed again this morning that the clearance rate is that they are getting back on top of it. And our expectation is that under the present regime, we'll be back to where we were in 8 to 10 weeks.
8 to 10 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
And that means being able to respond to the complaints as they come in within a set time frame, an hour if it's urgent, or a few days if it's
that's
not.
right, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron and then, yeah.
So just to follow on from that, do we change the priorities of those leaks going into winter with a lens on health and safety? Given that, like a Toby box on a slow leak, for instance, especially on an eastern side of the street, when you get a heavy frost, it'll just create sheet ice on the footpath. So that becomes a hazard going forward, whereas in summer they're fine, you just walk through them, you might get a wet leg, but that's the worst you'll get. You might get a broken arm in winter. So do we change the priority on those leaks going forward?
No,
I know we're not liable for anything.
Yeah. No, the short answer is we don't. However, if the customer advises that there is a particular challenge around a leak, we will take that into account.
Yeah, because often you look at the leaky patch and it might be a metre, 2 metres wide across a footpath from a Toby box, for instance. That's just going to be sheet ice. And like if someone on sticks with a disability, do they just walk around the road to avoid it?
We would need to be informed by the customer that there was a particular challenge with a leak to be able to prioritise that.
Right, okay.
Anne?
I'd just like to say from my experience of reporting leaks and things that the team, it's been almost, the next day things have been dealt with. So from my experience, I think it's working well.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a resolution to receive the report. I mean, one bit of feedback I'd give in terms of the resident survey briefing next week is that actually we also have a conversation about some of the reports we're receiving in here in terms of the levels of service and actually do we need them. So if people can give some thought to that, that would be helpful. Okay, I'm happy to move this. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Andrew. Any debate? I'll put the motion. All in favour say aye. Aye.